the bells of Highcrest tolled low and slow, a dirge masked as ceremony. Sir Kaelen of Dawnmarch rode through the sunlit gates on a snow-white destrier, armor polished but weary with travel. The city, once a beacon of faith in the eastern reaches of Thalanor, felt dim beneath the surface, as if a lantern burned behind stained glass. Word had come by hawk weeks ago. People were disappearing beneath the streets. At first it was vagrants, then priests, then children. The Order of the Dawnguard had sent its finest. At Kaelin's side rode Sister Elira Veyne, her silver, trimmed robes whispering beneath plate. A censer swung from her belt, gently exhaling glowing white smoke. Her eyes, grey and cold, searched every alley and rooftop. "I feel it," she said softly. "The light here, it's been buried." Behind them marched Tharos Ironbrow, broad, shouldered and stone-faced, hammer strapped to his back, beard braided with steel charms. City stinks of rot, not the kind ye scrape off boots. Deeper, older, he sniffed, cursed. Kaelen nodded once. "To the hall of the Archprelate. We begin there." The hall was cracked marble and silence. Archprelate Karanith awaited them beneath a vaulted ceiling of stained glass. But her robes were grey with ash, her eyes haunted. She bowed. "Thank the gods you came. We've lost 14 faithful. Our sanctified crypts, sealed for 2 centuries, were pried open from within." Tharos grunted. "Dead shouldn't walk unless summoned or angered." "They are neither," she replied. "They chant in the deep now. Not in the tongue of men. Not even in the old holy dialect. Something darker." Elira stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Show us the entrance." The catacombs beneath Verahall ran like veins of bone beneath the eastern quarter. Lanterns flickered as the paladins descended, each step echoing centuries of mourning. Dust shifted beneath their feet, disturbed not by time, but by movement. Kaelen paused at an old archway. Carved into the stone was a faded symbol, a sun hearth buried beneath earth. Elira's breath caught. "This isn't Elian's sigil. It's a mockery." Twisted. Tharos traced it with a gloved hand, frowning. "These grooves are recent. Someone carved over the original. Clever defilement." Kaelen unsheathed Soulbrand. The greatsword pulsed with a deep golden glow. "Prepare yourselves." They stepped into a wide, crypt chamber, lined with alcoves that once held honored dead. Now those recesses were empty. Bone dust lingered like fog. Runes shimmered in violet ink across the stone floor. Then came the whispering, low and guttural. Dozens of voices speaking as one. "The light that judges shall be unmade." The black flame rises. All kneel. Figures slithered from the dark. Hooded, thin, not quite alive. The nearest one smiled, a mouthful of nails, and flung a handful of powdered bone. "Diaboo!" Kaelen shouted. The powder ignited mid-air in a cursefire explosion. Tharos slammed his shield forward, shielding Elira as she raised her censer. Holy wind burst from her, clearing the foul smoke. Kaelen charged forward, Soulbrand arsing in a radiant slash. The blade cleaved through 2 cultists. No blood spilled, only ash. The others shrieked, clawing with fingers tipped in obsidian. One bit into Kaelin's shoulder. His armor hissed as it fought to repel the corruption. Divine storm. Veilmother. "Break this shroud!" Elira cried. Her censer glowed white, hot, chains arsing as she spun and struck. Radiant lightning burst from it, incinerating 3 more cultists. Tharos bellowed a dwarven war prayer. "Durak, guide me!" His hammer crashed down, sending a shockwave through the stone floor. The last cultist stumbled, screaming as holy fire spread through the runes they had carved. When it was over, the chamber was ruined. Smoke drifted like phantoms. Ash coated the paladin's boots. Kaelen knelt by the corpse of a cultist. What remained of it? Beneath the hood was the twisted face of a young acolyte, tattooed across her brow. Netherhollow. He froze. "That cult was destroyed during the second sundering," he said. Apparently not, Elira whispered. Or something has taken up their name. Tharos grunted, eyes scanning the walls. Look! Behind one of the smashed altars was a fresher set of stairs, hewn with purpose, sloping downward. Kaelen stared into the abyss. They weren't hiding in the crypts. Elira's voice was hard. They were digging deeper. Back above, the archprelate wept at the news. "I've seen those marks in dreams," she admitted, showing them her arms, etched with bruises in the same shape as the rune of Netherhollow. "He calls to us in sleep." The one below the Flame-Eater. The name silenced the room. Kaelen turned to the others. "We must go down. All the way. The cult is not merely hiding. They are preparing." Tharos nodded grimly. "Aye, and we bring the light with us." Afar beneath the city, in a vault not touched by sunlight for 600 years, a black flame flickered into life. A voice without a body whispered, "3 blades come. 3 lights burn. One by one I will extinguish them." And somewhere in the deep, bones stirred again. The stars hid behind thick clouds as the Paladins departed Highcrest. Their path led east through broken foothill and twisted woods to the ancient cathedral of St. Erith, a sacred site built atop a lee line of holy energy. Once a fortress of light in the dark days of the First Blight, it now lay abandoned and rumored cursed. Few dared speak of it. Fewer still returned. As the wind howled through black pine, Kaelen gripped the reins of his steed tightly. St. Erith stood against a tide of darkness that swallowed half the kingdom. Her cathedral was sanctified by Alien himself. And now it reeks of silence. Tharos growled, trudging on foot, eyes scanning every tree. Not even birds sing here. Elira remained quiet, her censer glowing faintly. The wind did not move her veil. Something sacred was defiled here. I feel Seraphine's sorrow in the air. The cathedral rose before them at dawn, a ruin wrapped in thorns. Stone walls, once white and gold, now slouched in shadow. The bell tower leaned like a dying tree, its bell missing. The doors were sealed, yet light bled through the cracks. Not holy light, but something wrong, like fire seen under water. As they approached, Kaelen whispered a prayer to Elion. His sword soulbrand flickered in response. The presence of evil made the flame shy. "Elira," Kaelen said, "can you sense a sanctum?" She closed her eyes. The sensor's chains lifted slightly, twitching like a compass needle. There's something deep below the altar. An echo, no longer pure. Tharos stepped forward and placed his palm to the gate. I feel tremors in the stone. Doors were sealed from within. Not to keep people out, but to trap something in. With effort, Kaelen pushed the massive cathedral doors open. The scent hit them immediately. Ash, old blood, and incense long spoiled. The sanctuary within was shattered. Benches were torn from the floor. Stained glass windows were broken, their coloured fragments crunching underfoot. The grand statue of St. Erith, once 20 feet tall, and holding the sunburst of Elion aloft, had been decapitated. The head lay smashed in the nave. Elira knelt beside it. They desecrated a saint of light. There's no redemption in what did this. At the far end, the altar had been pried open. Its marble top cracked like an egg. Full sigils were burned into the floor beneath it in twisting patterns. Tharos scowled, hammer ready. "They performed a rite here?" he muttered. "Something to invert the sanctity. Turn holy ground into a channel for something. Unholy." Kaelen's eyes narrowed. "Then we cleanse it." He stepped forward, lifting Soulbrand. Its light grew stronger near the altar, then suddenly flickered as if choked. A shape emerged from the shadows behind the altar. The creature wore robes once white, now soaked in pitch. It had no face, only a burned hole where features once were. Around its neck hung a reversed sunburst, an insult to Elion. In its hand was a relic staff, still humming with divine magic. but now corrupted, warping its glow into a deep violet pulse. "I was a beacon," it rasped. "Now I am the wick of the hollow flame." "Fall back," Kaelen called. The thing slammed the staff into the floor. Shadows rippled outward, pulling with them whispers and claws of living dark. Undead acolytes burst forth from beneath the broken pews, skeletal, glowing with cursed flame. Elira stepped forward, swinging her censer in an arc. "Seraphine, light the storm." The wind howled into the cathedral as radiant gales swept across the sanctuary, flinging two undead into the walls hard enough to shatter bone. Tharos charged with a roar, slamming into a group of three. His hammer rang like a cathedral bell as it crushed one skull after another. Kaelen and the hollow priest clashed in the center. Solbrand met the corrupted staff, and holy sparks flew. The priest hissed in a tongue no mortal should know, summoning black chains from the floor to bind Kaelen's limbs. He dropped to one knee. The priest raised his staff for a killing blow, but Elira cried out, casting a divine ward. A shield of light encased Kaelen just in time. The staff cracked against the barrier, and Elira struck from behind, chains wrapping around the heretic's form. Tharos smashed the altar with his hammer, breaking the ritual circle and flooding the chamber with radiant backlash. The corrupted priest shrieked, his body torn between darkness and the returning light. With a final cry, Kaelen drove Solbrand through the priest's chest. The blade ignited in a flare of white fire. The thing screamed, then fell still. Silence returned to the sanctuary. The Paladins stood amidst ash, broken pews, and shattered relics. Slowly, the light filtering through the stained glass brightened, as though the cathedral itself had taken a breath of relief. Kaelen stepped forward to the ruined altar. Beneath the cracked stone, he found a hidden chamber containing a sealed tome. Bound in gold, threaded leather, and locked with 3 divine sigils, it pulsed with contained power. Elira touched the lock and shivered. "This is no hymn book. It's prophetic." Kaelen read the inscription, etched on the spine codex of withering light. Tharos crossed his arms. "That's old. Pre-sundering. Dangerous," Kaelen nodded. "And it mentions a name we've heard before?" He flipped the book open carefully. A sketch, ancient and worn, showed a towering figure wreathed in black fire and crowned in embers. Vorthan the Flame-Eater. That night they camped beyond the cathedral ruins. As the stars reappeared above, Elira sat in prayer while Tharos cleaned his hammer. Kaelen read the codex by holy firelight, pages flipping under his gloved fingers. "There's a prophecy," he said at last, "about a time when the hollow flame shall rise again, when the sunburst will be reversed, and 3 lights must descend into darkness to strike at its heart." Tharos looked up. "That us?" "Then, maybe," Kaelen said. "Maybe not. But if Vorthan returns, it won't just be Highcrest that falls." He nearly burned the world during the second sundering. Only the combined force of 3 gods cast him into the void. Elira whispered, "Then we must follow the trail, before he rises again." Kaelen nodded. "The codex points toward Emberich, a bastion long lost in the fire peaks. We leave at dawn. Afar away, in a dreamless pit, something opened its eyes. It had waited long, and it remembered every paladin who dared to challenge it. The path to Emberich was treacherous. Jagged cliffs of black obsidian rose like dragons' teeth, spewing steam from vents older than Thalanor's first kings. Emberich was once a sacred stronghold built atop molten lines, a citadel for fire, priests who worshipped the radiant Lord through flame and purity. Now only charred ruins and sulphur winds remained. Kaelen led the way, his blade humming softly in the presence of buried relics. "This land was once fire, washed in holy light," he said. "Now it bleeds heat without purpose." Elira held her veil to her face. "Seraphine weeps here. I can feel it in the air, The betrayal, the burning. Tharos spat into the ash. I fought here once, during the last Dusk War. Cultists tried to crack the earth open like an egg and call something old from the core. We buried them, or so we thought. They reached the plateau by dusk. Before them lay the ashen ziggurat. Its basalt stairs half collapsed, yet the runes carved into its sides glowed faintly. Holy glyphs now warped, pulsing with inverted fire. Inside, the old temple was a maze of fire, scorched chambers. Charred murals told the tale of Vorthan's ancient defeat. A lion had descended with 7 chosen and sealed the flame, eater beneath the molten crucible, deep beneath this very ziggurat. Their faith had forged the light-shard sigil, a relic said to repel the void and cleanse twisted flame. That sigil, according to the codex, had been hidden after the sundering, guarded by trials of flame, will and memory, and worse, by the echo of Vorthan's loyal servant. Elira, Kaelen said, reading from the codex. You must be the one to bear the sigil. Only one with unbroken divine clarity may hold it. The rest of us are scarred. Elira's eyes darkened. Then I will not break. They descended into the chambers of trial. First was the trial of flame. A sealed chamber flared to life, surrounding Elira in a dome of living fire. The voice of an ancient guardian boomed. Only the pure may walk unharmed. Speak your god's name and walk through the flame. Elira stepped forward without hesitation. I am Elira Veyne of the radiant veil. I walk in the light of Seraphim. She passed through unburned. The flames parted before her like curtains of wind. Her censer shone with divine approval. Next came the trial of will. A mirror of light rose from the floor, and Elira saw herself, not as she was, but as she feared, blood-soaked, corrupted, a tool of Vorthan. Her reflection spoke, you will fail, they will fall, you will become the flame's prophet. Elira stepped forward and struck the mirror with her censer. I was afraid. But I choose light, again and again, not because it is easy, but because it is right. The mirror shattered. The path opened. Last came the trial of memory. Elira stood before 3 ghostly figures, her mother, a fellow sister lost in the Dusk War, and a man cloaked in shadows, her father, once a priest, now an apostate who had joined the Black Flame years ago. Each begged her to stay, to forgive, to abandon the blade. Tears filled her eyes. I carry your loss, but I am not your vessel. She raised her censer and invoked her final prayer. Veil Mother, give me the strength to release what I carry and hold what I must. The figures vanished. A platform rose from the lava below. On it sat a golden crystal shaped like a teardrop, the light-shard sigil. Elira stepped forward and took it. The entire ziggurat shook. Above, Kaelen and Tharos had not been idle. While Elira faced her trials, they were ambushed. Black-robed cultists surged from shadowed corridors, chanting in voices that echoed backwards. At their head stood a tall figure, skin-pale, eyes sunken, staff tipped with a burning skull. "Aros the Hollowed?" Kaelen growled. The heretic priest smiled. "The light shard will be ours. The flame must feed." Kaelen blocked the first firebolt with his shield. "Not while I draw breath." Aros raised his staff, summoning spectral chains from the ground. Tharos crushed one with his hammer, flinging a cultist into a wall. "We don't have time for poetry, heretic." Kaelen and Aros dueled beneath the temple's open dome, blades of fire and shadow crashing in a ballet of light and death. The cultists chanted louder as molten stone cracked beneath their feet. Just as Kaelen was driven to one knee, Elira emerged from below. The light-shard sigil pulsed in her hand, casting radiant light across the chamber. She threw it into the air. Alien's truth, Seraphine's mercy, Durak's strength. Let the light return. The sigil exploded in a shockwave of sanctified brilliance. The corrupted glyphs on the walls burned away. Aros screamed as his flesh blistered beneath the light. He stumbled back. But before he could escape, Kaelen ran him through with soulbrand, burning away his soul. The rest of the cultists fled or fell. When the dust settled, the paladins stood in silence. Kaelen wiped his blade clean and placed a hand on Elira's shoulder. "You were chosen, and you prevailed." She held the sigil, now dim but warm. "It belongs to the light again." Tharos knelt near Aros's remains. He said the flame must feed. "That means it's stirring, and the cult grows bolder." Kaelen nodded, opening the codex again. "There are 5 known cult chapters. This was only one. The rest are active. The final chapter, the Hollow Sanctum, is where Vorthan will rise." Tharos grunted. "Then we hunt them, one by one, cut out the rot before it festers." Elira's voice was steady. "Then let's bleed them dry." Far to the south, at the blackened coast of Mirdovar, a temple burned. Another cult chapter, led by the Herald of Vorthan, raised a spire from the sea, casting shadow over 3 holy cities. Their eyes glowed with fire. Their mouths spilled prophecy. The Flame-Eater rises. The Paladins march, but they march into ash. The winds of Emberich screamed louder now. Where once they had been whispers through ruin, they now roared like a herald of war. As the Paladins descended the ziggurat, the land groaned beneath them, quakes rolling like waves underfoot. The Flame-Eater stirred, and the earth knew it. They didn't speak for a time. Elira clutched the light-shard sigil, now sealed within a reliquary adorned with the emblems of all 3 gods. Kaelen studied the codex beneath firelight, turning ancient vellum with gloved hands. Tharos marched in grim silence, the hammer of saints resting across his shoulder like a judgment waiting to be spoken. When they reached the basalt ridge overlooking the next valley, Kaelen stopped. "The codex says this is the Ashwood Gate, one of the 5 sanctified thresholds built to contain Vorthan's influence after the second sundering. If it falls, then the Hollow Sanctum opens." Tharos finished. Kaelen nodded. "And Vorthan returns." They crossed into the next valley, where black stone turned red. Emberich's heart beat below, magma rivers cutting through the land like veins of fire. At the center of it all, perched on a spire of cooled obsidian, stood a fortress half, consumed by Lava Citadel Hotheran, once the high seat of the Flame priests. It was also where Kaelen had failed. Inside the ruined gatehouse, old memories clawed through Kaelen's defenses. He saw echoes of the past, burning scrolls, priests nailed to their own pyres, cultists dancing in flame. The screams of his former squire, Terran, who had died trying to stop the cult's first ritual here a decade ago. "I should have stopped this," Kaelen whispered. Tharos laid a hand on his shoulder. "You lived. You learned. You fight. Guilt won't strike down the Flame-Eater." Elira stepped beside him, eyes soft but steady. "Alien does not demand perfection, Kaelen. Only perseverance." Kaelen breathed, then nodded. "Let's finish what we started." They passed through the Citadel's sanctum, deeper than maps remembered. The walls shifted from stone to smooth obsidian, unnatural, grown like bone. The deeper they went, the more the structure resembled a living wound. Carvings of the gods were defaced. Fire runes warped into sigils of entropy, and then they reached the trial hall. The codex had spoken of this place. Those who seek the light's final edge must be weighed and broken before they are made whole. One must face the fire within. The door sealed behind them. A ring of light rose from the obsidian floor, dividing them. Kaelen stood alone. So did Elira and Tharos. Kaelen's trial, the echo of failure. He stood in a burning version of the Citadel's past. Tyrann, his squire, stood before him, alive but wounded. "You let me die?" Tyrann said. "You chose the mission over me." Behind him, a child burned. Behind that, the banner of the Dawnguard fell. Kaelen fell to one knee. "I made the wrong choice." But then he looked up, voice steady. "And I carry that choice to make the next one right." He stood. The vision burned away. Elian's sunburst glowed in the ceiling. "Your light endures." A voice whispered, "Elira's trial." The mirror of mercy, she stood before a congregation. Priests and sisters of her order, all burned and faceless. "You could not save us." They rose in judgment. "Mercy has no place in war." Elira trembled, but did not look away. Mercy is not weakness. It is strength when hate is easy. She raised her censer and cast light through the vision. The figures screamed and vanished. A breeze stirred her veil. "Seraphine sees your heart," the wind said. Tharos's trial. The stone's oath, he stood in a dwarven vault buried in magma. His kin stood frozen in time, betrayed, their relics stolen. One stepped forward, his brother Boran. "You left us to die. You saved the relic, not the blood." Tharos lowered his head. And I've lived with that. But what I carry now protects all. That was my oath." The vault cracked open, and from the lava rose a statue of Durak Stonefather, hammer held high. "You are granite beneath storm." Durak's voice boomed. When the trials ended, the circle of light dissolved. The three paladins stood together again, but changed, hardened, blessed anew. The chamber rumbled. A vault opened ahead, revealing the ashwood seal, a great iron disk covered in holy runes, humming with power. The light-shard sigil in Elira's hand pulsed in response. But behind it, shadows churned. From the dark, a creature emerged, tall, draped in layers of burned scripture and ash steel. Its head was a floating ember crowned with a halo of cracked bone. It did not walk. It floated, heat warping the air around it. It spoke with 1,000 voices. "I am the herald of Vorthan. I bear his flame until the Unmaker rises. You bring the light, then burn in it." It raised a staff tipped with a molten skull, and launched a geyser of cursed fire. Kaelen intercepted it with his shield, but the impact flung him back. Tharos charged, hammer swinging wide. The herald blinked across the chamber in a burst of flame and appeared behind Elira. But she was ready. She unleashed the full power of the light-shard sigil, creating a barrier of radiant wind and lightning. The herald howled as the light pierced its form. Kaelen rose bleeding and called upon Elian. Solbrand blazed white gold. Together, Kaelen and Tharos closed in while Elira held the creature in place with divine bonds. The herald erupted in a pillar of black fire, consuming the air, but Tharos threw his hammer into its chest, staggering it. Kaelen struck. His blade sank deep. The herald screamed, but not in death. In release, the creature's body unraveled, fire spilling upward into the ceiling as its essence was banished. The ashwood seal glowed once more. The codex floated from Kaelen's satchel, opening to a blank page where new words were now etched in divine fire. One seal restored. 2 remain. The hollow sanctum cracks. The black sun waits. Far across the continent, inside the hollow sanctum, cloaked in obsidian spires and guarded by the cult's last high lords, Vorthan the Flame, Eater opened a single eye within the void. "Soon," he whispered. "Let them come." The black sun rose. Not in the sky, but in prophecy. For centuries, the hollow flame slumbered in forgotten verse, sealed beneath broken cathedrals and crumbling bastions. But with every cultist's death, with every ritual disrupted, the flame grew more aware. Vorthan's servants no longer whispered, they marched. And Thalanor began to burn. 3 days after the battle at Embereach, the Paladins gathered at a cliffside watchtower above the sapphire expanse. Beneath them, the ocean lapped against jagged cliffs. Beyond the horizon loomed Isle Nyros, once a holy city, now covered in shadow. Smoke rose from its temples. Kaelen stood in silence, Solbrand sheathed but trembling at his side. 3 chapters remain, all active, all attacking. Elira held a scorched scroll, Delivered by Raven, the Temple of the Silver Veil, the Bastion of Stonewake, and the Dawnguard Chapel at Skyhaven, all struck in a single night. Tharos spat into the sea. Coordinated. Means the hollow sanctum gave the order. They know we're coming. Kaelen turned, eyes grim. Then we split. Would Elira? The Temple of the Silver Veil, the city of Velrun, shimmered with divine wards, its spires once channels of Seraphin's light. Now, fire coiled through its alleys. Cultists had breached the temple's core, performing rites atop the Veil Mirror pool, an ancient conduit of pure light. Elira arrived with a host of battle priestesses, her censer glowing brighter than ever. She lifted the light-shard sigil, which floated above her hand, responding to the sacred air. In the reflection pool, she saw not herself, but Vorthan's shadow. It hissed through her voice. Even mercy burns when bent too long. She banished it with a chant. Veilmother, send the storm. A tempest of holy wind tore through the sanctuary. Lightning fell from sky to spire, shattering corrupted sigils. Cultists screamed as their shadows were peeled away, leaving husks behind. But atop the grand altar, a flame-touched oracle unleashed a final curse, splitting the air with a shriek. Elira faced her alone, calling down radiant bolts to pierce the beast's burning soul. When the battle ended, Velrun still smoked, but the temple held. Tharos, the vault of Stonewake, the dwarven city, lay beneath Mount Gorin, carved from bedrock and sanctified with runes of endurance. Tharos arrived as the cult cracked through the outer defenses, wielding infernal burrowers and molten horrors. "Not in my halls," he roared. With a company of stone oath paladins, he repelled the first wave, hammer glowing with divine pulses. As the cult's ashborn giants breached the inner gate, Tharos invoked Durak directly. The ground obeyed. Stone rose to form a barricade. Lava congealed beneath his feet. He chanted the oath of earth and struck down the lead giant, his hammer ringing like the birth of a mountain. In the depths he found a desecrated reliquary, its contents burned away, except one scroll protected by divine shell. It read, "Only 3 may seal the sanctum, but 1 must fall." Tharos grunted. "That's not happening. Not yet." Kaelen, the Dawnguard Chapel at Skyhaven, high in the cliffs where morning first kissed Thalanor. Skyhaven's chapel blazed with black flame. The chapter master, once Kaelen's mentor, now stood corrupted at its heart, his face hidden behind a mask of scorched bronze. "You disappoint me, Kaelen," the traitor intoned. "The light is not gone. It has changed. Adapt or burn." Kaelen's forces clashed blade to blade with the cult's elite guard. Warriors blessed by the black sun. He fought with fire in his blood and alien's voice in his heart. Solbrand burned with righteous fury, as the traitor unleashed a void storm upon the altar. Kaelen invoked the Sunburst Creed, a battle hymn that caused his blade to erupt in golden flame. He severed the heretic's mask in a final blow, revealing a face too twisted to recognize. Skyhaven held, but Kaelen's eyes dimmed. He was family. This war is claiming too much. They reunited at the ruins of a forgotten outpost, where lee lines crossed and the sky pulsed violet in unnatural rhythm. The codex now glowed without touch. Its newest prophecy burned in fresh script. When the 3rd seal is broken, the hollow sanctum shall rise above the sea. The Flame-Eater will breathe once more. Tharos placed the recovered scroll beside it. "And this one says one of us must fall." Elira clenched her fists. Lies, prophecies bend. They are warnings, not commands. Kaelen remained silent for a long time. Or their choices, sacrifices. He looked toward the horizon. A darkness now floated where no island had before. The hollow sanctum had risen. An obsidian fortress hovered above a churning whirlpool, kept aloft by black lee lines. Towers of burned bone jutted skyward, and flame poured from its heart in slow spirals of smoke. Around it circled black, winged beasts and twisted remnants of Thalanor's fallen orders. From within the central spire, Vorthan whispered, "Come then, little lights. I remember your gods. I remember the screams. I have new names for them now." As the Paladins prepared their assault, their gods answered. Kaelen saw Elion's sun burning clear for the first time in weeks. Elira heard Seraphine's voice in the tide, promising clarity. Tharos felt Durak's presence in the mountain, urging him to endure. They would not run. They would not falter. The Light of Three would march on the hollow sanctum. One last battle. The sky wept ash as the Paladins approached the hollow sanctum. Floating on blackly, lines above the sea, the fortress loomed like a dead star, its towers shaped from obsidian and bone, its walls burning without flame. From its heart pulsed waves of warped energy, darkening the clouds and stealing color from the world. At its base, the sea churned around a maelstrom vortex, pulling in ships and debris as if feeding an unseen hunger. And above it all, in the highest spire, waited Vorthan the Flame-Eater, awakening fully for the first time in centuries. The Paladins stood on the edge of a precipice, watching as the final beacon of Thalanor's light was consumed in shadow. "We'll never get close by air or ship," Elira said grimly. "The whirlpool would crush us." And the skies cursed. Tharos grunted. "Then we go through. Beneath the sea there were tunnels, ancient passages carved by the gods during the second sundering, meant as escape routes should Vorthan ever rise again. Kaelen led the way, torch in one hand, Solbrand in the other, its light cutting the abyssal dark. The tunnels wreathed with corrupted magic. Walls bled, and echoes of weeping followed them like ghosts. They fought things down there, things without form. Shadows with teeth, memories turned into claws. Elira's prayers kept the party safe, forming bubbles of light that repelled the worst. Finally, after what felt like days beneath the sea, they emerged within the hollow sanctum's underbelly. Inside, the sanctum pulsed like a heart. Corridors curved in unnatural spirals. The very geometry rebelled against logic. Doors opened into themselves, rooms shifted when unobserved. It was as though the fortress dreamed, and they were unwanted thoughts. "We're being tested," Kaelen whispered. "No," Elira said. "Being invited." They fought cultists mutated into beasts, flaming knights who bled molten gold, and possessed relics turned into traps. Kaelen's sword sang with divine fury. Elira's censer unleashed radiant storms. Tharos's hammer shattered walls and bones alike. At every step, the light-shard sigil reacted, glowing, guiding, warning. The grand spiral, after ascending a staircase that defied gravity, they reached the grand spiral. A vast central chamber coiled like a serpent. Hovering in its center was a massive glyph made of burning, script the final seal between the material realm and Vorthan's true form. Guarding it stood the Herald Reborn, not a mortal now, but a flaming construct of armor and void, wielding a spear of obsidian fused with divine bone. "I was light once," the herald intoned. "Now I am the flame that devours it. This is your end." The battle erupted in chaos. The herald moved like lightning, teleporting between strikes. Elira was thrown into a wall, ribs cracking. Tharos stood guard over her, absorbing blow after blow. Kaelen alone chased the herald, clashing blade against spear in bursts of holy light and void flame. Every blow unraveled reality. Walls cracked, time stuttered, sound bent. But then Elira rose, bloody and defiant, sigil in hand. "Veil Mother," she whispered, "break this illusion." A wave of clarity washed over the chamber. The herald faltered. Kaelen seized the moment and drove Solbrand through its chest. Light exploded in every direction. The herald howled, and vanished in a burst of divine fire. The final seal cracked. The glyph split. The sanctum shook. Cracks spread through its spires, revealing a void behind the stone. Not nothingness, but a place that hated being forgotten. A voice boomed across the sanctum co ocean. Be Jejidi. Kaelen turned to the others. This is it. The Codex said one of us may fall. I don't believe in fate, Elira said, gripping his arm. Only in choice. Tharos placed a hand on both their shoulders. Then let's choose to win. Together. They stepped through the broken seal into the final chamber. The heart of the sanctum. The sanctum's heart was a throne of fire, obsidian and bone. On it sat Vorthan the Flame-Eater, titanic in form, armored in scorched metal, his face hidden behind a mask of ever-burning cinders. His voice echoed like a dying sun, 3 flames, 1 light, and still you hope. I remember your gods. I killed their angels, I burned their temples, and I shall consume you too, he rose. The room warped. Walls melted. The battlefield became a sky of falling ash and shattered memory. The final battle began. Vorthan fought with power older than flame. He conjured sun-black firestorms eating divine spells. He reversed holy blessings, causing pain instead of healing. He walked through wards and deflected relics with a word. The Paladins held nothing back. Kaelen invoked the full power of Solbrand, unleashing pillars of searing light that left permanent scars on Vorthan's armor. Elira wielded the light-shard sigil directly, channeling radiant winds that shredded shadows and dispelled illusions. Tharos became a wall of will, his hammer ringing with Durak's final command. A battle hymn that shattered every false idol Vorthan summoned. But the Flame-Eater adapted. He split into 3 forms, each mocking one of their gods, a burning angel of fallen Elion. A storm twisted into a noose, a mountain cracked and crumbling. Each paladin faced their god's defiled image, and each in turn destroyed it. But Vorthan laughed through it all. You do not kill the flame, you feed it! Then he struck. A massive burst of voidfire engulfed them. Elira shielded Kaelen with her body. Tharos dove into the blast. When the smoke cleared, Tharos stood at the edge of the throne, bloodied, burned, but holding Vorthan's arm pinned. Strike him, he growled. Kaelen's eyes filled with tears. Tharos! D-O-I-T-U, Kaelen lipped. And Solbrand drove into Vorthan's core. Elira raised the sigil, chanting every divine name she knew. Light surged. Vorthan screamed, not in pain, but in shock, and then he burned, not with void, not with hate, but with truth. The hollow sanctum exploded in a column of divine light visible across Thalanor. Obsidian rained like glass. The sea stilled. The sky cleared. Kaelen and Elira awoke amidst rubble and silence. Tharos was gone. Only his hammer remained. The hollow sanctum was no more. Where once an obsidian fortress had floated on black lee lines, there now remained only scorched ocean and a ring of still light, like a wound in the world, stitched shut by divine fire. Kaelen awoke with blood in his mouth, and Solbrand smouldering beside him. Elira lay not far, cradling the light-shard sigil, its glow faint, pulsing like a dying heartbeat. Smoke curled into the dawn, and the waves that once crashed with fury now whispered gently against stone. But Tharos was gone. His hammer, the hammer of saints, rested upright in the sand, unburned, planted like a gravestone. Kaelen knelt before it. Durak has claimed his son, Elira said softly, her voice raw. He bought us this chance. Kaelen stood slowly. Then we honor him. We finish this. The final pulse. Though Vorthan's body had burned in holy fire, the void he left behind had not fully closed. The air still shimmered with corrupted memory. The final echo of the Flame-Eater lingered, a spiritual wound deeper than flesh trying to pull itself back together. In the heart of the crater, amid molten stone and glassed sand, a rift pulsed like a black star. From it came whispers, pleas and promises, threats and temptations. Kaelen and Elira stepped toward it, their relics glowing once more. One final blow, Kaelen said, and the light prevails, or falls forever, the voice replied. The rift burst open, one final time. The Flame-Eater reborn, Vorthan returned not as a titan of fire and ash, but as a wraith of divine betrayal. His form flickered. An outline of golden wings turned black, a halo made of teeth, a heart of broken relics. He hovered above the crater, his voice now one with the wind. "You destroyed my body," he hissed. "But you carry my flame in your doubt." He struck. Not with fire, but with memory. Elira saw her sisters dying in Velryn again, her censer slipping from her fingers. Kaelen saw Terran's last scream. Relived the moment he chose duty over kin. They staggered, chained by guilt. But then Kaelen raised Solbrand, placing its blade against his chest. Alien's light was never about perfection. Only redemption. The blade flared. The illusions shattered. Elira stood beside him, tears in her eyes. "I carry the lost with me, not as shame, as promise." Together they stepped into the air. The gods answered. Divine ascension for the first time in centuries, the trine of light unified. Alien's sun burst from the clouds. Seraphine's veil of wind parted the horizon. Durac's strength echoed from the stone below. Kaelen's armor blazed like the dawn itself. Solbrand stretched into a radiant spear. Elira's censer burst into a star of chains and flame, the light-shard sigil floating above her heart. They rose to meet Vorthan in the sky, among clouds scorched by centuries of war. He screamed as divine power clashed with shadow fire. The final battle was not one of blades, but of will. Vorthan's voice echoed into their minds. "You fear me because I am truth. I am what comes after hope fails. I am the ash of every prayer unanswered." Kaelen answered through gritted teeth. "No. You are what we become when we surrender. You are cowardice clothed in flame." Elira cried out in a voice louder than the wind. "You will not be remembered, only redeemed. In your destruction." Together they struck. Light and void collided in a scream of creation. The heavens cracked. The rift howled and collapsed inward. Vorthan's final scream was not of rage. It was of surprise. As if, for the first time, he realized the light was not a weapon. It was a choice. Aftermath, the war ended not in thunder, but in stillness. The rift sealed, the flame silenced. The sky, for the first time in years, was blue. Kaelen and Elira stood at the edge of a new dawn. Behind them, the sea shimmered. Before them, the world healed slowly. Thalanor's kingdoms lit their beacons once more. Temples were rebuilt, relics re-consecrated, orders renewed. Tharos's hammer was entombed at the summit of Durac's spine. The dwarves carved his name into the mountain itself. Kaelen returned to Highcrest, but only to pass on his sword. Solbrand was mounted above the hall of the Dawnguard, flames eternal. Elira became High Priestess of the reclaimed Veil. She never took another title, only guided those who had lost their light back toward it. In time, songs were written. They did not call them heroes. They called them reminders of what happens when hope is kept, when guilt is faced, when light is not something you follow, but something you become. Thus ends the tale of the Light of Three. But in the land of Thalanor, the flame never rests for long, and somewhere, deep beneath a forgotten ruin, another shadow stirs,